Welcome to the Functional Esthetician Podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Dench. Today's special guest is Katie, a fitness professional. We are going to talk about fitness over 40, what type of workouts are best, how high-intensity workouts are not good for our nervous system and can spike cortisol, plus what type of workouts are recommended for perimenopausal women. Before we get to our interview, let me introduce Katie. Katie is a fitness professional with over 15 years of experience, teaching a range of modalities, including strength training, indoor cycling, yoga, and mobility. She is an ACE certified group fitness instructor and a 200-hour registered yoga teacher with a focus on helping women build strength, move better, and feel more connected to their bodies. Katie is also the host of the podcast Wellness After 40, where she breaks down the science behind midlife health, bridging the gap between research and real-life application for women navigating change. When she's not teaching or recording, she's a busy mom of 2 teenagers, often found driving them from one activity to another. Hi, Katie. Welcome to the Functional Esthetician Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited for our conversation today.
Me as well.
I'm going to have you introduce yourself and share your story of how you got started and how you got to where you are today.
Well, like you mentioned, my name is Katie, and I'm a wellness educator, yoga, mobility instructor. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 2 teens, and I also host a podcast called Wellness After 40. I've been in fitness for about 15 years. I've taught like every modality under the sun that you can think of, except for step. I've never done step aerobics, but I'm in my
aerobics.
I mean, cool. I'm in my 40s. So if you're also in your 40s, you remember step. It was the it ticket. But that's one I've never taught. But I've taught almost every other modality under the sun. And I'm in my 40s. And so I have had to change a lot of my teaching, a lot of my own personal fitness as I've grown older. And being in the wellness education space, I do a lot of research on my own, and I decided to make it into a podcast because health is wealth and I love to share knowledge. So that's what I've been working on for the last 15 years. But yeah, I'm excited to get into your podcast and talk about fitness.
And you mentioned that you had to change your workouts. So why do workouts change when you hit your 40s?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons why workouts change. One is like physiological changes in our body require us to change. So we obviously start to lose muscle mass as we get older. It's just kind of it's called syncope, and it is just a thing with aging. You know, God willing that we're able to age, we all start to lose muscle mass. And so the loss of muscle mass is going to change how your movement patterns are. And it's also going to ask a little bit more of your body. We also have reduction in different hormones in our body that also cause us to have varying types of energy levels, balancing of our insulin, regulation of our blood pressure, and then cortisol, which changes how we can really work out. And then lastly, we have X amount of years behind us. So we have had injuries or other types of, medical issues that have happened to our body. And so all of these things compound and change how we used to work out.
You touched on perimenopause and cortisol. And one thing that I always feel like comes up for my clients is the fact that all of a sudden we start gaining weight. And then we start exercising even harder, which I feel like that's the worst thing you could do at this age. So do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, cortisol is actually a really interesting thing because cortisol itself isn't bad. We naturally produce cortisol. It is used to wake us up in the morning. It's used to motivate us throughout the day. Our body naturally uses it. And it's one of those things that we just live in this really high impact society where we're constantly having dips of our cortisol. So it is definitely something that there's so much more research on cortisol causing a lot of these areas of fat to stay in our body. So we think of like the belly fat, a lot of that could be cortisol related. And so hopefully that answers your question a little bit about like perimenopause and why we're kind of staying within that lane.
Plus insulin resistance too.
Yeah, there's so much research also on just how cortisol affects insulin and how it can regulate in your body. It's very, very interesting. And to speak on
Yeah.
like types of workouts, that's one of the reasons why we have to start changing our workouts, because maybe your workout is causing you to have high spikes of cortisol. So if you look at the HIIT workouts that we used to do, like those high intensity trainings, that also increases your cortisol, which is helpful in some capacities, but very unhelpful in others. And so our body holds on to fat in certain areas because we are trying to regulate our cortisol. And that's why the workouts have to change.
When you say workouts change, if somebody's doing a lot of HIIT workouts or doing a lot of cardio, what would you change?
The research is really pointing to, especially for women in their 40s plus, because when we go back to that loss of muscle, it goes into strength training. Cardio, it does help you lose weight, it helps you burn calories, but it doesn't necessarily always build muscle. And muscle is one of those things that is how you can just live functionally through your life. You're able to get yourself up off the ground with muscle, not because you ran 15 miles. It also helps protect your joints and your bones. So the first thing I always tell someone is that a new workout they should add is strength training, and you want to lift heavy. So that's one thing that is definitely needs to change. You also should work on your flexibility, your balance and mobility, because these are things that are helping with your range of motion so that you can move in any manner that you want to in your life. And especially helps you with that kind of that idea of like, I fell down, I got to get back up. Mobility, flexibility, all kind of come into play. So that's another thing I usually tell my clients to add to their life is some type of mobility, flexibility, or balance. And you can get that in a lot of different modalities, but I feel like a lot of people think of yoga when they hear that. And then lastly, I would ask people to look into more recovery, because you've been working so hard in these HIIT workouts and your body is super stressed. You should look into the research of recovery. And I'm not just talking about like sleep in extra on Saturday. There's a lot of science around actual recovery modalities and different types of things that you can do, from different types of therapies to cold plunges, saunas. There's a lot of research on how that actually helps with your longevity.
Tell me a little bit about recovery. What would be some things that you would recommend to people?
Well, there's lots of different types of modalities out there that people probably have heard of for years and years. Massage therapy is definitely a level of recovery. A trained massage therapist is great because they're going to work into more of your fascia. So it's not just like a sore muscle, it's like different parts of your body that may be holding stress, kinks, injuries. Massage therapy is great. There's also a lot of research on sauna, which is going into like a heated area. Heat therapy is one of those ones that really helps with blood pressure and insulin regulation. It helps with joint issues. It can help also with skin issues. Like there are some types of sauna that can help if you have psoriasis. This is all based on research that I've read. Definitely always talk with your doctor on your specific issue. And there's interesting data now about cold plunging, and it's actually a little controversial. I don't know if you want to go into the controversial topic of cold plunge, but it's very interesting. So cold plunge is like, going into an ice bath and trying to hold your body in this bath for X amount of time. And the research for cold plunging for women in their 40s is actually very different. And so if you look at the research, women in their 40s, because of cortisol spikes, don't need to be in a cold plunge for as long as a male or as cold as a male. So I think it's like 37 degrees Fahrenheit is what's really good for a woman if they choose to cold plunge. But cold plunge is excellent for helping with your immunity building, stress of the joints, inflammation as well, because you're shocking your body into having to regulate itself in these cold temperatures. But the research on cold plunging for women is that we don't need it very long and we don't need it as cold, just because our cortisol spikes too much. It kind of counteracts what the cold plunge is doing. And then there's lots of other types of therapies that I've just started to research on my own when it comes to like supplementation. We're thinking like NAD, we're thinking creatine, and I'm not a medical professional, so I've just kind of touched on that research, but that's some other things that we can get into on the nuance of different types of supplementation to help with recovery.
It's so true. And what you said about the cold plunges, I think women just see something that's trending and think to themselves, I have to go do that. not taking into consideration the fact that women live high stress lives. And as we get into that perimenopause, the nervous system regulation becomes a problem, cortisol regulation becomes a problem. And I feel like doing a lot of these like excessive like HIIT workouts, cold plunges, stuff that is a little bit more excessive is too much stress and too much on our nervous system.
I think one of the most important elements that people have to remember is that there's nuance to all of this. And then,
Yeah.
taking the blanket recommendation from your favorite fitness influencer on Instagram is not always the best fit. You always want to start with talking to your doctor, look back onto things that have made you feel good. Like I say that feel good barometer coupled with like a trusted medical professional is really the guide when you start to choose different things for yourself when it comes to workouts or recoveries or just really anything in your life. And I call it like the feel good barometer. And if something doesn't feel good, then why do it? Like
Right.
I'm at this age too, where I'm in my 40s and I've done a lot of things that I didn't want to do for a really long time. And thankfully, my estrogen has dropped enough that I don't care anymore. I don't want to do that. It doesn't feel good. So, listening to yourself and then listening to a trusted medical professional is really where we should start.
Well, and women, we're guilty of pushing through. We think, well, I just need to work out harder. I need to do more because I feel like it's ingrained in us.
Yeah, absolutely. I had talked to a guest not too long ago, and she was talking about this syndrome called the good girl syndrome. I don't know if she coined that. I haven't researched it too much further, but it sounds like what it is. Like we are supposed to be polite and agreeable and fit nicely into this little box. And that's kind of how a lot of women have been raised or are taught to be. We can bust out of that mold and that's something that doesn't feel right. We shouldn't do that.
And I think it's also giving ourselves permission to say, okay, this workout is stressing me out. It's too much for my body. I'm not getting results. Now I need to start to shift and think of something better to do for myself.
Absolutely. Workouts for most people are not fun. People don't want to work
Right.
out. It's called work in the title for a reason, right? Like it's not necessarily like vacation. So working out for a lot of people is already stressful enough. It's time consuming and it doesn't really necessarily feel that great. I would say try to pick a workout that you really like, first of all, so you can be consistent because that's really the magic in working out. It's not necessarily about specialty of the modality that you're doing. It's the consistency of it. And if you can consistently go to a bar class versus a strength training class, let's do that because
Yeah.
any movement is magic, but consistency is really the key.
I even do that with most of my clients that come to see me. I tell most of them just walk every day for about 15, 20 minutes because walking truly, it gets you in that routine and it's just something that's easy and you can fit it into your day.
I just was listening to a researcher talk about walking and why it's so powerful. And
Mhm.
he was talking about how it's this bilateral stimulation. And there's a lot of therapies, like cognitive types of therapies, like mental health therapists, that talk about this bilateral stimulation. And that nuance of walking and that movement pattern really helps with the brain patterns. So it's really fascinating how we were designed to walk for many reasons. And one of them is like, it actually is a mood booster. It's actually good for your mental health.
I've been trying to do that now that the weather's nice. I've been trying to get outside and it's funny. I feel the difference on days when it's rainy or I just don't get a chance to walk. And all I'm doing for myself personally for exercise is walking.
Yeah. And getting outside in nature is
Right.
clearing. Hopefully, you get some fresh air. You get a little vitamin D, a little. I know you're an esthetician, so we will wear a
Okay.
sunscreen,
I
but we,
actually no, I do tell clients now get outside because we do need some sun for vitamin D. You don't want to sunburn, but you do need the
right.
sun.
Right. A little vitamin D and just kind of
Yep.
clarity. You may sit behind a screen or looking at a phone or being cooped up all day, like being out in the real world too. Have you heard that saying, like, go touch grass? It
Yep.
really can help heal everything you got going on. Like, just go outside for a few minutes.
Grounding.
Grounding.
I do want to talk a little bit more about stress in the nervous system because I feel like, that's something that exercise can help with if it's done correctly.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. One of the main things that I teach is yoga, and yoga is centuries old of different movements. They call them asanas or the poses. And it's very much about connecting the breath and the mind and the body. I love yoga for movement, especially when it comes to nervous system regulation, because we had talked about in the beginning of this episode, like we are all at higher states of cortisol for lots of different reasons. Adding a movement practice that also couples in this idea of how can I regulate my sympathetic nervous system it's a perfect mixture.
I love yoga. And it's great because you are moving, you're breathing, so it's moving energy through your body and it's building muscle at the same time. Even though it doesn't feel like you're doing much sometimes. It's such a powerful
hold it down,
workout.
dog.
Yeah. No, I know. Some parts of it. Some of it's very relaxing and other parts you're like, "Oh my goodness, how much longer do I have to hold this?"
And so often like people, think of the new type of yoga, but yoga has been cultivated for centuries. And so these movements matter and they matter for different reasons. And I love to stay kind of in the science portion, but because I do dip my toe in yoga, there's a little woo and it could be like movement of your energies through your chakras, different blood flow patterns that you could kind of look into. So yoga is really magical. I always encourage someone to try a yoga practice or try a class.
And even just the idea of breathing really helps incorporate, relaxation, and it resets your nervous system too.
There's a book called Breath. He wrote all about the science of breath and how it actually changes synapses in your brain, changes your blood flow. Like breath alone is very magical. There's so much research on breath and how helpful it is. If we go back to that barometer of like what feels good, like stopping right now, everyone at home, or if you're on your go, just stop and take a deep breath in, hold it, and then take a deep breath out. And people are like, wow, that feels really good. And I'm like, I know. And it's accessible to you anytime, anywhere you are. Just take a breath, like how good it feels. So if it feels good, then maybe we should do more of it.
Exactly. We've been talking about exercising for weight loss, especially when we're starting to deal with the weight gain, but exercising and fitness beyond weight loss. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Exercise beyond weight loss is really imperative for longevity of life. We want to move to not just lose weight, but we're wanting to strengthen our bodies so that we can live a full life, be able to move and travel and experience life. And movement really gives you that because you're not isolated in your body. Adding exercise to help not just allow you to have a larger range of movement, but also protect your bones is really important, especially women. We get into older ages and then osteoporosis can happen. And this is a condition where our bones start to have issues. And so weight training alone helps with bone mass and is so imperative to keeping you healthy as you move. And then also exercise helps with your immune system. As we get older, we have to increase our immunity because of all of the things coming at us. And so having a healthier immune system is really important too. Exercise is so much more than what our number on the bathroom scale says. It's about living your life to its fullest.
And when you recommend weight training, like how often and how heavy should the weights be?
Well, it goes back to that feel good barometer. There are some people that are trainers in the space and it's every day, bro. And I'm like, wow. I don't know if I have every day to lift heavy weights. I personally try 3 days a week. And I think that goes back to that nuance of, well, if you haven't strength trained at all, I would not go 3 days a week. I would maybe just go 1 day a week and just see how that feels. So starting out small is always important just to try to fit it into your life. But we're looking at least 3 days a week. And we don't want to forget about cardio, like going into the walking, doing something to bring our heart rate up is really important for our organs. So we want to have a little bit of cardio in there. So if we try 3 days a week, adding in some mobility work, like yoga, Pilates on the 4th day. The 5th day is a full rest. The 6th and 7th could be gentle walking or nervous system recovery work. That would be my recipe for success.
I love that. What would you leave our listeners with? Like, what's something that they can start implementing today?
Well, I think the first thing is choosing a modality or movement that is something that you enjoy is the best recipe for success. Secondly, start very small. Maybe just one day a week is your workout day. And if you can do more, awesome. And if not, just start one day a week. And the third, just know that you're not alone and that we all are in this together. And there's so much out there for you to explore. And adding a little more movement is just a way to keep you happy for the rest of your life.
I love that. Start small, because I feel like women feel like if we're not working out 6, 7 days a week, we're doing something wrong. Start slow, just start with one day. I think that's great advice.
And the little kind of pro tip that I always tell people about strength training, especially once you start to get into a groove with it, I feel like women are so scared of heavy weights because they're afraid they're going to bulk. And our hormone pattern, while it does differentiate as we get older, we still have estrogen. We're not going to bulk like a
Right.
male. So lifting heavy weights is really, really important for gaining muscle mass. And also, the heavier the weight, the less you have to do. So I always tell someone, if you have like 10 minutes, don't get it like a small little itty bitty weight, because you're going to have to do tons of repetitions to actually feel the same as if you did a heavy weight for you and do 5 reps. If you're going to lift, try to lift as heavy as you can, because you'll lift less in time frame and you'll just get a better result.
That's great advice. How can everybody find you? What's your website? Which social media sites are you on?
I'm on Instagram as livingwellwithkatie.e. And my website is livingwellwithkatie, KATIE.net. Then also you can listen along on my podcast called Wellness After 40. And it's on anywhere that you get your podcasts, from Apple to Spotify, as well as you can find it on my website.
And I'll drop those links in the show notes so that way they can click and connect with you.
Thank you.
Do you want to share a little bit about your podcast? It's Wellness After 40, right?
It's called Wellness After 40, and we talk about topics that interest women in their 40s, everything from health to fashion to mental health. I've even had a Social Security person on there, because you never know what you don't know about Social Security until you talk to a Social Security person. But we talk a lot about just issues that are coming up in our 40s and just how to live our best life. And I've been so fortunate to be able to bring on expert guests that talk about different types of things and how to make us feel our best as we get older.
I'll definitely drop that link in the show notes so they can listen. Katie, is there anything else you want to add before we close today?
Thank you so much for letting me come on. I'm just so thankful that we can have these conversations. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Today we had on our special guest, Katie, talking about working out after 40. What type of workouts are good, digging into other modalities beyond workouts, and how to get started. Please check the show notes to connect with Katie. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday to episode 35. We are going to be geeking out over the skin microbiome. You don't want to miss this one. And always remember, you deserve to love the skin you're in.